Okay, so in this video, I'm going to analyze one of my friend's games against me, and let's go. So, my friend was white, and I was playing the black pieces. Let's just hop on the analysis board. Okay. I'm going to turn the engine off for now, but I might just run the engine in the future for just a general accuracy. So, it started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop e5. This is called the Roy Lopez opening, or the Spanish opening. So White's goal in this opening is to try to take the knight, and then when the time is right, to take this pawn, hopefully for free. So Black's goal is to defend this pawn, or if White takes it, bring his queen out here and cause some troubles for White. So after this, I played a6, which is called the Morphy defense. And it's basically putting a question mark on this bishop and telling the bishop, okay, bishop, what are you going to do? Are you going to take my knight, or are you going to move back? So in this position, my friend played bishop takes c6. And this is one of the most common variations. For example, if you can see on the right, 54% of games continue with bishop takes c6. So I took with the d pawn, and this is better than the e pawn because I'll show you in a second. The main thing is that it opens up the queen, so the queen can come out. And right here, let's say white takes. This is an inaccuracy, and it's quite a bad mistake because we have this move, queen to d4. This is a very powerful move, and it forks the e4 pawn and also the knight on e5. So if white tries to save the knight, then we just take, and we also check the white king. And the only way for white to block this check is to either move his king out to f1 and forfeit castling rights, or block with his queen. But if white blocks with his queen, then we can just take the queen. And again, white has forfeited castling rights. Although we have a slightly worse structure with the double pawns. White's king is in the center, and if we play moves like bishop to g4 and then castles long, then we can create an attack on the white king. And also, you see, our bishop is ready to be developed, this bishop too, while white's bishop is still stuck behind this pawn. So in this position, instead of taking the knight, my friend played a better move, which is d3. And basically, what this does is that it prevents black from going here and then capturing the e4 pawn. Right here, I played bishop to g4, trying to pin the knight to the queen. And now white cannot take the pawn, because if I do something random like h6, then white can just take the pawn for free, because, for example, after h6 takes... If I try to do this, then white can just go back, and I have nothing. So, after bishop to g4, white castled, and I developed a knight. In this position, my friend played a mistake, which is d4. So this tries to open up the center, because when your king is castled and the opponent king is not castled, you should try to open up the center and open lines for attack. And my friend tried to do this, but the problem with this is that this pawn is being attacked two different ways, by the queen and by the pawn. And this knight is defending the pawn, but this knight is also pinned to the queen. So, let's say I just take with the queen first. If I take with the queen, then although the knight is pinned, the knight can still take my queen. And, for example, something like this. I'm up a pawn, but for now, but after this, I think white is slightly better with the central pawn. So instead of that, I first remove the defender. It's a very important tactic. So I remove this knight here, and it no longer guards this pawn. And my opponent took with the g pawn, which is very interesting since it doubles the pawn and it also opens up the king. And then I took with the queen, and we traded queens. Right here, my opponent played rook to e1, maybe with ideas to push this pawn, and I castled long. My opponent here played c3, trying to get rid of the d4 pawn, which is a pass pawn. But right here, I played c5. And it's very important that I did not take, because if I took, then it actually benefits my opponent, because first I get rid of this pass pawn. And also, my opponent's knight can develop. And overall, this trade overall benefits my opponent. So when you see trades like this, you should evaluate trades. Is this trade really worth it? Does this trade help my opponent, or does it help me? And right here, I push the pawn so that if white takes, then I can take back with this pawn, and I no longer have double pawns on the c file. And also, I can maintain this pass pawn. So my opponent played e5, trying to dislodge this knight. I moved it here. My opponent went here, and I think that this is a mistake as well, because it allows my knight to jump to this very important square, which attacks the c2 square, and that square is very weak because I can fork the two rooks. So I did that, and again with a threat of knight to c2. And my opponent played bishop d2, and this is a very common issue with beginners, because you see a knight, and then you see, oh, I see knight. Me see knight, me attack knight. And then you just do not acknowledge where the knight is going to go. So the knight has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places to go. So this knight is evidently going to go somewhere. It's not going to be attacked. Be captured by the bishop. So one of the squares where the knight can go is here. And again, if the knight goes here, then I can fork 2 rooks. And now my opponent is screwed, because after something like knight here, then I can take one of the rooks and be up in exchange. And that happened in the game. So, again, very important, you see this move? What's it trying to do? What is it trying to do? If you attack my knight either way, then you're going to lose. The only good move in this position is to move the knight here, knight to a3, because it guards the square and it prevents my knight from going here. Even a rook move is bad, because unless you're trying to guard the square, because this rook is trapped in the corner. So after this, I pushed the g pawn to g6 with the idea of fianchettoing the bishop and doubling my rooks. So my opponent played king g2. Interesting. I went along with the plan. f4, and right here, what I'm trying to do is to create a pawn break, because this pawn is kind of annoying, and I really want to get rid of it. So what I'm trying to do is to push this pawn and break it. But if I push it right now, then this pawn can go here. And if I try to attack it, my opponent has rook to e1. So I first put my rook to e8 to just set up a blockade of this pawn. If it tries to move forward, then it just gets eaten by my rook. And then after king f3 here, and my opponent can no longer push this pawn. So my opponent took, and now my bishop is free. So the bishop can travel, and I'm eyeing this diagonal. You see, right here I have tricks. If I push this pawn, then my bishop's my bishop's vision gets opened up, and it attacks both the b2 pawn and the rook on a1. It pins this pawn to the rook. So that's one of the ideas I'm looking at. So when you're playing positions like these, you should always look for tactical ideas, especially if you're winning. Even if you're losing, you should always look for tactics. And this is one of the most common tactical ideas. So rook to e1, getting the rook, and trying to combat the open file. I took the rook because if bishop takes, then I can push my pawn, and it's getting closer to promotion. So bishop takes, and again, now I'm opening my bishop's vision on the b2 pawn. So my opponent went here, which is probably best, because it blocks the pawn from going forward. For example, if my opponent did this, then the bishop is trapped. It can't move, so you'll lose a bishop. So this is the best move, probably. And I took here, and now the knight is in trouble. And it turns out that the only square for the knight that doesn't lose immediately is knight to b1. And it's kind of funny because the knight developed from b1, and now it's going to go back to b1. So knight b1. I push the pawn here because, again, I have ideas to push this pawn. If I have connected past pawns, it's very important, and it's crucial for winning an endgame because it's very hard to stop connected past pawns. So right here, what I'm trying to do is set up a pawn brick. So if you take here, then I take back, and then we'll have connected past pawns, and this pawn will try to march down. So b5, and my opponent took. So, and you see right here, I have connected past pawns. 1, 2, and 3. So my opponent went king to g4. I do not know what the idea behind this move is, because ideally the king should be coming here to protect the bishop and trying to at least trying to participate in the fight here against these past pawns. But king to g4 is just nonsensical. I really don't see the plan for that. c4 trying to with ideas of pushing c5 and then just having an unstoppable pawn storm. And knight to c3 is an inaccuracy because after taking, the bishop no longer blocks here because remember the bishop is very important because it blocks my pawn from promoting for the time being. So going here just accelerates my pawn push because after bishop here, there's no way to prevent this except capturing it with the bishop and sacrificing the bishop. So after this, I'm just a clean rook up. And all these pawns are just super weak. So yeah, I'm going to demonstrate how to win in a winning endgame like this. So king to f3 takes. Trying to cut the king off. See, my rook here cuts the king off, and now I can just promote these pawns with ease. So right here, and I just took a pawn. Check, check, winning this pawn, and that's mate.